have outtakes and so on, a lot of it on the floor, you might want to do a second follow-up perhaps, or a director's cut. But my question for you is, having seen the film and perhaps having had some discussion as an animator, you know, being present, is there a particular cameo in that presentation you would want to change or redress, or somehow reformulate?
Okay, several questions. So the first answer is I'm not trained as a journalist. I'm trained as a filmmaker, and so as a documentary filmmaker. So there is some parallel, but you know, I felt I was stretching myself while making this film because there were so many issues. So that was a challenge. So when André Drouin said, "Oh, you're first intelligent journalist," we were saying, "No, we're not journalists. We're filmmakers." So that, in terms of whether there'd be anything that I'd like to change in the film, it's a bit of an unfinished film for me because the film did not get any financing. It was not financed at all.
Which gets back to Ms. Menard's question. How come we're financing so many other things and not...
So the film was not financed at all. It was done with an editor that was willing to work on the film for 6 months. Myself, my time, the producer's time. And then in post-production we had the support of for the sound mix, actually forget the production company, and the National Film Board that helped us do the online and clean up the images and so on and so forth. So the film was not financed, and initially we had wanted to do a full-length film that would have given more time to breathe. I think it would have been a better rhythm, but Télé-Québec said that there was interest in the film. They saw the long version. They said we'd be interested in a 52-minute version. And so from the long version we went to the 52-minute version, and then they said we're not interested in the film. And so at that point, you know, we were exhausted and couldn't go back. So I think that what I would have liked to do is would have liked to have made a long version. I find this version just a little too packed. You know, there's not enough breathing space. In fact, I was reflecting upon, you know, what part of the film kind of speaks to you. Well, the part of the film that speaks to me is the religious part, where there's the ceremonies and there's just time to breathe from all this chaos. And in a sense, that was intentional because that's what the commission was like. It was these intense discussions with all kinds of issues that they just kept on piling up on top of one another, not really resolving themselves. It was just getting more and more and more complex. And you know, whenever you sit down with anyone, you talk about it. It's like, you know, this intense debate, discussion. And so these moments of peace and tranquility, well, we found them in the film, when people reflect together and, you know, pray as a moment of reflection. So that's the long answer is I would like to make a longer film.
Just one answer. Did you have difficulty with some of the main characters and having a release?
No.
Mr. Bear. Oh, excuse me.
You know, the film has been seen outside of Quebec in other parts of Canada, and if so, have you had any feedback?
No, unfortunately, again, it's so difficult to distribute. Well, actually, no, not true. The film was purchased by the University of Toronto, and there's a professor at the University of Toronto that wanted to show the film. I haven't gotten feedback from him yet.
Send him an email.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd be interested to know what kind of response you might get.
Yes.
I just have a hunch that people in the rest of the country might kind of take their hat off to Quebec for kind of dealing with a political correctness which tends to suppress Anyway, that's what I got out of
yeah.
what I saw today.
Yeah, that's what I would hope as well. The broadcasters, CBC, said, "Oh, it's a Quebec issue. It's not really relevant."
Now we have a few hands up. Miss Cosette has been very patient.
Bon, justement, ça va un petit peu dans le sens de monsieur, là, parce que là, je me disais, il y a quelque chose qui me frappe. Là. Le Canada, c'est grand. Là.
Oui.
Puis je me dis, ça se peut pas qu'il n'y ait pas de Hérouville ailleurs. Pourquoi est-ce que c'est jamais sorti dans les médias? Fait que je me dis, au Québec, ça fait peut-être l'affaire du reste du Canada. Ah, le problème est juste au Québec.
C'est ça.
Mais je suis sûre que le problème est ailleurs, mais on n'en parle pas parce que c'est pour sauver le multiculturalisme canadien. On va dire, on va refiler le problème au Québec. Donc, c'est ça, moi je suis sûre que du Hérouville, un peu partout, là, mais c'est comme les médias qui sont comme, ils n'ont pas le droit d'en parler. Là, et que,
Oui, absolument.
Je trouve particulier, ben, à un moment donné, ça va sortir. J'imagine que ça va sortir ailleurs aussi.
But she's bringing up the point. There's probably Aerovilles in other parts of Canada, but we don't hear about them, and that allows us to take a reductionist perspective that it is just a Quebec problem. And she's challenging that that is indeed the case in a country as big as Canada. And when will we hear about these kind of issues elsewhere in this country? I might add, in the 80s, if you were watching what was happening in Alberta with the Sikhs, and the Sikhs who wanted to get into the Mounties, there were real issues, but then they were marginalized. Whereas this was front and center in the media.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that you know, when we were making the film, we were looking at what was happening in the rest of Canada, and yeah, there were echoes of, you know, similar attitudes. I think that the difference, the particularity of Quebec is the language issue. That always comes up, and a sense of a minority within a majority. You know, so a group being much more vocal. But no, the attitudes are the same. And in fact, the code of life in a Swiss town, there was a code similar to Hérouville's that was written as well. And couple of other places. So, you know, this issue is everywhere. Although, you know, I think that the Swiss case was somebody that kind of intentionally drew up a code, not with the intent that Hérouville had to provoke. You know, it was more of a serious code.
And there are municipalities in Switzerland that have outlawed minarets. They cannot be built, no matter how big the Muslim community is. Ms. Tucker.
Yeah, so I hope my question isn't misplaced because I missed the first part of the film. But what I did see, I was really struck by the focus on the issue of religious accommodation, like the particular focus that was taken, and how religious pluralism was being discussed and represented, but only a part of it. There was like a noticeable absence of, I guess, certain religious realities or identities that are just not coming up, maybe because of the lack of the will to represent those realities in this kind of forum. So I don't know if I missed something in the part where I wasn't here that discussed basically anything that didn't have to do with secular Quebec with Christian roots versus Muslim Quebec. But I didn't really see anything outside of that box, I suppose. And I'm wondering, I mean, that's probably what you were seeing too. Like, I'm just supposing, and if you have a reaction to that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we, you know, there was a discussion when making the film, should we kind of open it up, you know, because religious accommodation, of course, doesn't only have to deal with the Muslim faith, and in particular women wearing the veil, but it's, you know, Sikhs, there are Christian examples as well. But because you know, the debate in the commission was really focused on women in the veil, so I decided to choose, you know, these two Muslim women as an example of kind of the
comment on the focus of the debate as opposed to like the focus that was taken on the debate of the commission?
Well, you know, for me, the two pairs of characters, André and Bernard and Najat and Samira, were just kind of the extremes of the spectrum. And then everybody else was in between, more or less. That was my just choice. So this created tension.
C'est Mademoiselle Lafortune?
Oui, c'est ça.
D'accord, à vous.
J'aimerais parler de chaos, évidemment. Ce qui me vient beaucoup comme question, c'est avez-vous, à travers le suivi de la commission et de personnages en particulier, et même vous-même, avez-vous la perception, l'expérience, été témoin de l'expérience d'un changement chez les personnes qui s'y représentaient souvent? Ou, par exemple, soit chez M. Drouin, soit chez les musulmans, même les commissaires ou vous-même. Qu'est-ce que ça a pu provoquer comme changement, comme impact chez vous? Avez-vous l'impression que, à mesure que la commission se déroulait, ça changeait de niveau ou ça restait toujours dans le même niveau de chaos? Je demande ça vous entendre là-dessus.
She wants to know, did he see development, change, even improvement on some of the people involved, whether it be individuals like Monsieur Drouin, commission members, or did things remain the same? What was his experience of, through the chaos, did he see some sort of improvement?
Alors, question très intéressante, j'apprécie. Alors, avec M. Drouin, non, pas de changement. Avec M. Thompson, Bernard Thompson, oui, très grand changement. Avec Mme Najat Bougaba, pas de changement. Samira Laoui, changement. Alors, je pense que ça dépend des personnes. Il y a certaines personnes qui ont regardé, compris, changé leur point de vue, souvent adouci leur position forte. Et d'autres personnes que ça n'a pas changé, ils répètent toujours la même chose. Mais je pense, en tant que société, je crois qu'on a avancé. Je pense, moi ce que j'ai vu, au début, le débat était presque hystérique. La première rencontre, c'était à Gatineau. Il y avait une tension incroyable. C'était comme, on ne savait pas est-ce que ça allait exploser ou non. Alors ce que M. Taylor dit, c'était absolument la réalité. C'est qu'on ne savait pas. On s'en allait, le micro ouvert, on ne savait pas qu'est-ce qu'il allait se dire. À la fin, les commentaires étaient souvent les mêmes, mais il y avait comme un dialogue qui était élaboré, il était plus précis, plus posé. On pouvait s'attendre déjà qu'il y avait à chaque forum, il y aura peut-être une ou deux personnes qui diraient des choses quasiment racistes, qu'il y aurait un 4-5% qui serait d'une ignorance que c'était négatif par rapport aux religions, par rapport à la nourriture cachère, par rapport aux raisons pour le port du voile, ou du turban, ou du kirpan, etc. Et le reste, bon, ça peut être des positions qui étaient plus des positions plus à gauche, plus à droite, mais des opinions assez correctes. Mais c'est ça, avec le temps plus posé et plus de connaissances. Le plus grand changement, c'était par rapport aux médias, je pense. Qu'au début, vraiment, encore une fois, des conneries se disaient, mais c'était incroyable, puis ça se multipliait. Et avec le temps, je pense que les journalistes se sont rendus compte de qu'est-ce qui se passait, puis qu'il fallait réajuster le tir. Les manchettes étaient encore très provocatrices, mais les textes étaient quand même bien.
In some, he's pointing out, of the 3 sets of 2, in each set there was one individual who did begin to modify, adapt, change their position, and then another member who just stayed the same the whole way through. It began in Gatineau with almost a hysterical atmosphere, but then over the course of the commission it calmed down, and then certain leitmotifs, themes began to come up again and again. And he said that the biggest change took place in relationship to the media.
I think also, just to be a little more precise, in terms of with Mr. Taylor and Mr. Bouchard, and I think it would be interesting to ask that question to Mr. Bouchard. But you know, I think that there was also a sense of change in them, a growing sense of confidence that this is going to be okay. Also, I think a reflection upon what they were seeing. Because before the forums, they had private sessions where they were able to talk to people. So they were really able to get a pulse of the society and a better understanding of the society. And I haven't spoken to Mr. Bouchard, but with Mr. Taylor, I've talked to him, and you know, it was an incredible richness for him to have been able to lead this commission and witness what people had said.
And at the very beginning, folks, the media were really on the commission and saying this commission is a free-for-all. People are saying things that should never be said in public, and they better get a control of it. So I think this issue of developing certain confidence, and you might have noticed one man is ranting, and Gérard Bouchard says, "Now wait a minute, just a minute here, sir. You're starting to make racist statements," and he calls him to the carpet. Ms. Michaud.
Oui, c'est votre site. J'ai trouvé votre site très évocateur.
Okay.
Vous l'avez choisi parce qu'une évocation historique de liberté, l'égalité et accommodement. Alors, qu'est-ce que vous pouvez dire en choisissant ce titre? Il me semble assez éloquent.
She wants to know why he chose the title Liberty, Equality, and Accommodation.
Because it's the French Revolution.
Yeah. It's the French Revolution. Absolutely, it's the French Revolution. It's the idea of a secular state, and accommodement was so present in the media that I felt that we could add to the French, motto a bit of our perspective on things.
But what it tells me is that liberté, fraternité, égalité ended up with a bloodbath on the guillotine.
Oh.
And you see, with liberté, égalité, accommodement, people will just talk.
Well, liberté, égalité, fraternité. So I changed the fraternité to accommodement. So for me, that was a play. Yes, fraternité, but you have to kind of you have to have some kind of an understanding and some kind of flexibility. It's not this brotherhood that of a monolithic society. For me, that's what the motto evokes. Fraternité, on est tous ensemble, on marche dans la même direction. But the modern society isn't like that. And Madame Asdouz, in the film, I felt really kind of, it's very precise. You think multiculturalism is all a happy family and that we all exchange, but it's not like that. Sometimes you have to manage things. Sometimes you have to set down rules, and sometimes you have to define yourself as a society. What kind of society? So that's why I chose the title. Although I'll tell you, we had many titles, and it was a long battle to choose the title.
Now the title is particularly evocative because if there's a place where these clash of civilizations and culture wars are taking place, it's France. France has made it illegal for women to wear burqa, and they are now arresting and fining them. This is the law. So France echoes very strongly in this. And Gérard Bouchard did his own doctorate in France, and he's a member of La Légion d'honneur of La France. So he has very, very close ties. He understands what's happening in France. Now, Mr. Kupina had his hand up.
Just switching gears a little bit, what other topics or interests would you see that you'd like to
things. I mean, right now it's a challenge being a documentary filmmaker. There are not many documentary films being produced, and so it's tough. And so I divide my time between a visual artist and a filmmaker. Right now, I must admit, I'm concentrating more on visual art. So again, I invite you to the exhibit and to see the show there. But I proposed several films to the CBC. One of them is on a company that had a phenomenal idea here in Montreal. It's the first commercially viable greenhouse in the world that was built here in Montreal, in a Hunsick, an acre on a commercial rooftop, producing really organic food. Before studying film, I studied geography, and so I was fascinated by this idea of changing the way that we see cities by eliminating these deserts on rooftops into useful spaces. I think what Lufa Farm has done is fantastic because they produce food that's at our doorstep. The average vegetable in Canada travels 4,000 kilometers before it gets to your grocery store. That's crazy. It's just not sustainable. And this is a fantastic solution.
Afra, you had your hand up.
Yeah, it's my